Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's episode of Talking Elite, episode 51. We are here to talk tonight about disappointing endings to both matches and pay-per-views. We've had plenty of those in the history of the sport, and obviously a lot of people are still feeling the aftermath of World's End at AEW. So we are going to go over a couple of the endings in a couple of matches, maybe some pay-per-views, as well as certain wrestlers whose careers didn't end on a high note or just disappointingly. So before we get into tonight's discussion, let me introduce our panel for tonight. And a side note, we will probably be joined by someone here in a little bit. But to start us off, joining us all the way from AEZ Canada, she's one of our favorite Twitch streamers here on the channel. Please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Siren.
Hello, I'm super excited about tonight.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a very exciting topic, and we're always happy when you join us, Siren. So you have so much great energy, and we love it.
Yeah.
And of course, again, I always say this, but it's the truth. This show would not be where it is right now without this gentleman. He literally puts his blood, sweat, tears, and excitement into this podcast. He's our favorite producer, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Connor Hayes.
Yeah, I don't know. I take these introductions every week. I don't feel like I deserve all the credit, but thank you for these type of introductions every week. Yeah, this should be a really fun episode considering World's End. And judging by Adam's background, we're in for an interesting episode. So,
yeah, no, absolutely. I thought this was interesting a topic because we talk about the idea of pay-per-views or matches, the expectations of them as, oh, this is going to be a good match. I can't wait to see how this goes. Or this pay-per-view is going to be great. Or this wrestler is going to have a great career. But we're always left in disbelief when it doesn't go that way. And I thought this topic was a really good one to do tonight for our episode, considering we are just a few days removed from World's End, as well as last night's episode of Dynamite, which was an interesting episode. It felt like a earlier premiere of Dynamite from the early days of AEW, and I really enjoyed it. A lot of good segments, some surprise debuts, some great stuff from AEW last night, and hopefully it gives us something good to go forward with. But in all that, we are going to move on to tonight's topic. Again, we are talking about disappointing endings. And for wrestling, for us as fans, we don't want to be disappointed, but if we are, we say, okay, well, that was disappointing. Let's move on. Some people aren't like that. But tonight, and a lot of people on viewing and listening, you guys can chime in as well. Tonight, we are going to go over 3 of our disappointing endings that we have picked as the panel, as well as a very disappointing pay-per-view that we didn't think really hit it out of the park at all, and a career of a wrestler that we thought, oh, this person's going to be great, and then it just fizzled out and was just very disappointing. Again, you may join us in the comments. You may share this with your friends as well. We'd love to hear from everybody. But we are going to go ahead and start with Siren. So the basic gist of this topic, Siren, is you go ahead. We'll start with your third or whatever, I don't know how you want to list it, or just one of them, and then go ahead and give an explanation as why this disappointing match ending is on your list.
The beautiful thing about me is like I don't have like a 1 to 3. It's either I really, really love something or I really, really don't. And at the end of the day, I do understand why a lot of these things need to happen. So bear with me, okay? Are we going to do like one each and just move on, or do you guys want me to run through the whole thing?
Yeah, no, we're going to do one match at a time.
Perfect. Sounds good to me.
We're going to go one match at a time, and you're going to explain why you picked that match. Some pick it apart a little bit, aspects of that match, which was good and which ones were bad, and basically the ultimate sum of why it was disappointing. And then we'll go one by one our reaction to that pick.
That sounds absolutely perfect. Okay, cool. So my first one is actually going to be the tooth and nail match. And mine's pretty much all going to be AEW because I am a massive AEW fan nerd right now. And that's my passion. So it's a Britt Baker and Big Swole. And I was actually talking about how I don't really like Big Swole in general, and she comes out the victor in this, so that was really disappointing. But what I found most disappointing about it was they tried to do a very cinematic match, and it was very poorly done. And I love Britt Baker, and I feel like she could do so much better. But so yeah, it was all set in Britt Baker's like dental office. I don't know if y'all remember this, but I try not to. Um, and yeah, essentially they like had like the drills and the tools, and Britt tries to use like the drills on Big Swole, and it was just really campy and bad acting, and like to have it set in Britt's office because she wasn't ready yet was really weird. I mean, I know what they were trying to do. I understand what they were trying to do. It was just very poorly executed. And then to have Britt lose by like getting gassed like nitrous was pretty cheese, and big. I just was never a Big Swole fan. Although I will say that it was neat to see this feud happen because it wasn't actually like a championship feud. It was just like ladies feuding, which I really dig. So again, that was really good. But as a whole, I didn't enjoy it, and I thought it was very disappointing. It could have been so much cooler and less campy.
No, absolutely. Connor, what is your opinion on the match that Siren has started off, Big Swole and Britt Baker?
I feel like I said it many times that I thought the worst AEW pay-per-view was All Out 2020, and that match was on there.
It was the opener, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, the first thing everyone saw. It was supposed to be on the buy-in, but fans demanded it be on the main show, and that was a huge mistake. And in the follow that, Matt Sydal ends up breaking his neck. Almost ends up breaking his neck. Fan almost jumps Moxley during COVID. Then we get a lot of other not so good matches, I thought. We got like Dustin Rhodes and Shawn Spears in like a 1 minute match. It was kind of like a squash match. It was very poorly done, I thought. But yeah, I agree. That was probably the worst match in AEW history. But I don't know. Marina Shafir has got some up there too. But yeah, I like Britt Baker, and Big Swole has some few decent matches in her run. But yeah, I agree with Siren on that one.
Yeah, no, it was very disappointing, especially with Britt being supposedly the it girl for AEW, and you would think that they would have solid matches with her as far as them promoting her as the next big thing in the women's division. I unfortunately watched a little bit of the match and stopped watching after 5 minutes just because I couldn't do it. It was that bad. And honestly, I honestly thought it could have been better. Again, the skill set of both women could have been shown a little bit better, as well as just being a regular match and not set in a setting like Britt Baker's, dentist office. So honestly, I think after that match, though, Britt has definitely come a long way from the matches that she's had in that match. And honestly, it's one of those women matches that you kind of want to forget, unless, again, you're like Connor and you don't want to watch any more Marina Shafir matches anytime she's on TV.
You made me dig this one up from the recesses of my memory. I blame you for this, Adam. I was like, I can't think of bad matches. Like, what am I doing? And I was like, wait a second. And so you made me drudge this up from the recesses of my memory. Thank you, Adam.
Oh, no, I'm glad I can help you. Honestly, yeah, no, this was a good pick to start off with. So thank you, Siren, for that first one. Connor, why don't we start off on your first match that was a very disappointing ending to you?
So this I did not watch live because I got into wrestling for a little while. But it was Sting and Jeff Hardy. That was their first time going against each other, and that was kind of like a dream match in TNA. And like going back and watching this, I knew Jeff Hardy had problems, but I hadn't been following up on wrestling as much, so I didn't know what was going on. And then Jeff Hardy comes out, and he's the face and all this. He's flipping fans off, and then Eric Bischoff. If you end up watching the documentary on Peacock they have now, the Hardys, Eric Bischoff, and then really go into detail of what they really did. Eric Bischoff comes out and he tells Sting just to end it. Like Sting's gonna have to end it forcefully, or Jeff Hardy's gonna have to just lay down. I'm glad it didn't come to forcefully. I don't feel like it did, because the match ended pretty quickly. Sting did his finisher, and that was it. But But they did end up having another match in TNA, and it kind of made up for this one. But the first time matchup, that was a bit of a disappointment. It wasn't that the match was bad; it was just the way it went down, I guess.
Right. No, and I agree. I think that's definitely on everybody's list for that match. At again, Sting and Jeff, obviously, because Jeff was, under that influence and having hard times then, and really kind of put a wrench into that match and everybody's dream match of it. Siren, do you remember that match? And if so, what was your take on it, and why you agree with Connor?
As a person currently in recovery, like I will always be a recovering addict alcoholic. So I mean, I understand in a sense like the going out there like and going and putting on the match at all, but like at the same time that he should have never been in the ring. To have like if I was in that state, to have the entire world be able to go back and rewatch that match and rewatch me out there in that state is the most regrettable thing that I've ever seen happen to a person in my life. And that is truly honest from the bottom of my heart. It is not just disappointing for wrestling fans and for everybody involved in the industry, but it is so disappointing for him because when going through recovery, you have to go back and you have to review these things and apologize and make amends and everything. And that moment is immortalized for this man, and it is disappointing for that. And that's all I have to say. I mean, like it's tough. And hey, I'm right there with you. My sober moment was live streaming to my community. So I solidarity, Jeff, 100%. Like, and I'm so proud of you. Just saying.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree with you. Myself as well. I've had alcohol abuse in the past, and I've kind of stepped away from it, and literally don't drink as much as I did. I mean, I'll have a few drinks now and then, but it's not as bad as what I was. And
I can't touch it.
Everybody, goes through that stage of both abuse and just down and depression, and just hits rock bottom, but bounces right back. And that match was kind of where you saw Jeff at one of his weakest moments in his life.
100%.
You felt like he was more of a victim than an abuser to himself. He literally realized that he was ruining his career doing that. And now you see him here in AEW. He's looking a lot cleaner. He's got his brother by his side helping him through everything. He's got friends and family helping him. But yeah, that match in general, and just the aftermath of the crowd chanting, "This is BS," and Sting even looking at the crowd and saying, "No, I agree." Even Sting was upset about it. And, the fact that they're both in AEW now, and they both look at each other backstage and said, "Man, that was just a bad moment, but I'm glad we got past it." I know Sting's probably looking at Jeff saying, "Man, I'm glad you recovered."
Yeah, 100%.
Everything like that. So it's nice to have the close people in the pro wrestling community, especially in the locker rooms, be there for someone who's gone through that. And so with me, I'm going to start off my list. This is going way back. You guys can hopefully remember this, but it is going to be WrestleMania 7, the ending match of Yokozuna beating Bret Hart for the title.
Oh, yeah.
Afterwards, Hulk Hogan coming out and Bret telling him, "Go get the title back," and Hulk Hogan winning the title back. There's a reason why that was very disappointing to me as a kid. One, the Hulkamania did not need a belt. He was already a 2-3-time champion by that point. It was time for Bret to get that, because Bret was, rolling in that year. He was a big star in the WWF. And Yokozuna's this big villain, and everybody wanted to see Bret Hart had his moment. Yet Vince and Hogan basically were like, "Hey, we'll get the belt back on you." And at that point, you're like, well, who else do you build a star if Hulk is going to win the title again? For me, I early on, I was a big fan of Hulk Hogan, but once he started winning multiple titles, I was like, "Hey, I've seen this before with a guy named Ric Flair." And so I was just very disappointed that they didn't let Brett win the match to retain, or even let Yokozuna go on a monster heel run with that title that year. So that's pretty much my first pick for that match. Siren, do you remember that match, and how do you feel about it?
I don't remember that match. I was born in 1990. But I definitely remember my brother being like the biggest Hulkamaniac in the entire world, and my mom was the biggest Bret Hart fan, and therefore raised me to be the biggest Bret Hart fan in the entire world. So there was many personal battles in my home over, who was better. But yeah, no, I definitely don't remember. But I am on the Bret Hart like trained forever. I tiny pictures of me 3 years old holding the big foam heart as big as myself. So yeah, I could see how that would be disappointing.
And Connor, I'm a historian like I am, but I know you know a lot about AEW. But do you remember that match from the early '90s from WrestleMania 7?
Oh yeah, I remember. I watched a lot of documentaries of it. I watched it. Well, not live, but I watched. I watched that match lots of times in my life. Yeah, it was basically Hulk Hogan. He was supposed to retire as a wrestler or whatever, and they wanted to get him and Tata one last time, and it was just like him getting in the way thing, kind of like he kind of always is. But yeah, I like Bret Hart better than Hulk Hogan. Bret Hart's actually one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. If I had to say like my favorite wrestler of all time, probably CM Punk number one, number two would be Bret Hart. But I bet CM Punk would say Bret Hart's his number one favorite. Because Bret Hart's had a lot of great matches over the years, promos. He comes from one of the most legacy families of wrestling history, the Hart family. Bret Hart's my favorite, and yeah, I watched that match and I don't like watching it again because when you hope that the finish changes, more times you watch and it just never changes.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I said, it was just that moment of, well, Hulk is not going anywhere, and he's still a face and he's still popular, but I felt like it took a lot of momentum away from Bret at that moment, because Bret was just on a monumental run with that title originally before losing to Yokozuna, and in order to send the crowd home happy, they needed another baby face. And unfortunately, the catalyst for that was Hulk Hogan. Now, everything that came after that, we all know the history about that. Hogan wins multiple titles, then joins WCW. Well, actually, Bret has won the title, got screwed, goes to WCW, and then Hogan goes to WCW. So it ends up that your two biggest baby faces in your company in the 90s move on to your competitor. So I don't think that match had any great happy ending for anybody other than send the crowd home happy. So Siren, we're going to move on to your second match on your list that you found very disappointing. What would that be?
This is actually from, I believe, last year or the year before. I can't remember. But it was where Dalton Castle and the boys lost the trios champion, the 6-man tag, to the embassy. It was very upsetting. And like, because I am like the biggest Dalton Castle and the boys fan ever. Like, he comes out and like, I call myself an energy vampire, and nothing is like top shelf like Dalton Castle's energy. Like, one Dalton Castle promo can keep me going for months. And so like I was so in this. I was pacing, like watching this match, and there was some really great spots. But I feel like the finish is what really did it for me, and it's because they beat, I believe it's Brent. It was one of the boys, and they just like they manhandled him. It was like a triple power bomb, like 1, 2, 3 from like all of them, and these are all big men. And so like I am standing, I am shouting at the TV. It is not a pleasant time in my home. I was very disappointed, yeah, and I was absolutely crushed. And I feel like that ever since then, you can see slowly Dalton is like on this little roller coaster where he has moments where like I am the greatest thing alive, and now all of a sudden he's like wily. Like, where is your smile? Why were you not smiling when you came out to the ring last time? I'm lost. So yeah, I was very disappointed, absolutely crushed, actually devastated. Still am.
Yeah, no, I'll be honest. I forgot this match.
Sad.
It's very sad I forgot the match because Dalton Castle and the boys are very entertaining to watch, and their just in-ring presence is very reminiscent of mixture of like the Freebirds and like Too Cool mixed together. Like it's like the mixture of that, like but with like the energy of Ric Flair mixed in all three of them, you know. So, but their energy is great, but obviously the Embassy, you know, is a big group now, even now with under Swerve and Prince Nana as the Mogul Embassy. So I think it did benefit that in the long run that they're now seen as a power group, the
100%.
Mogul Embassy. But yeah, the Dalton and the boys definitely do keep entertainment going. Connor, what are your thoughts on that pick?
Yeah. I'm a Brian Cage fan, so it's kind of hard to not like that. So, yeah, anything with Brian Cage, I was happy because there for a while he wasn't getting used at all.
No.
I mean, a whole freaking year. And then it's actually the Dynamite that me and Adam were there, but didn't know each other at the time. Tony Khan came around and said, "Where's Brian? Like, I really want to see Brian Cage." I tweet him every day, 24/7. Like, where is this dude? Like, he's cleared wrestling events, and you're using people who are less talented. Like, Brian Cage can just come in, and then he said, "Stay tuned." And then a few months later, ROH gets rolling again. Brian Cage comes back, and then wins the deal. He's now a 2-time 6-man ROH tag team. ROH champs. They won him back. They beat was it Young Bucks and Young Bucks and Hangman. That's who they beat for it. So yeah, it's hard for me to. I mean, I can see why the disappointment, but for me, I'm glad Brian Cage won. But I like Don Castle and the boys. So
I went very personal with my list. You guys are gonna know that I went very personal.
No, that's really good. Honestly, it's fine because, like I said, you do any promotion, and because you're so close with Ring of Honor and you love it so much, then I have no problem with you putting it on the list and making it a personal list. So, I mean, that's what the show is for, is to let people, you know, all of us on the panel, to share our personal opinions on certain things in pro wrestling and not argue with one another. You know,
I love that.
So, Connor, what would be the second match on your list that you have chosen?
This is going to be an old one. Adam might remember this. This is an old one. I can't remember what SummerSlam was. It was Yokozuna and Lex Luger. Lex Luger was he was like the next Hulk Hogan. Like Hulk Hogan had left. Like they were starting. Like they were trying to build their next Hulk Hogan, and Lex Luger was that person. Had the Lexus and all the commercials and the merchandise, and he was the next Hulk Hogan. I got this thing. I got this event on DVD actually. I mean, not on DVD, VHS. Brand new actually. I never opened it, never did anything with it. Because one day I want to get Lex Luger to sign it. But this match is very stupid. Fans loved it, but it really doesn't really make any sense. It's 40 World Heavyweight Championship. Yokozuna and Lex Luger. In this match is a very famous moment. Lex Luger body slams Yokozuna. Yokozuna is a big dude, so that couldn't have been easy. But Lex Luger wins by count out and doesn't even win the match. He wins the match, doesn't even win the championship. And then the crowd's happy and celebrating, but I mean, yeah, you won, but you still didn't win the title. So what does it really mean? So for me, like going back and watching like everything in order, Lex Luger comes off really, really good, and then you win, but you don't really win. So that was kind of disappointing. In my opinion.
Yeah, no.
He never won the title, did he? He never ended up winning the World Heavyweight Championship. I don't think he did. Like, see, that was stupid. Like,
no, I totally agree. That was the summer of the Luger Express. That's what it was in WWF. It was called because they're trying to find someone to replace Hulk Hogan as the next big baby face, and Lex Luger was the next baby face they were trying to push. It's this next American muscle bound hero for the fans. And the whole summer, every show they did, Lex Luger would arrive on a bus painted in red, white, and blue. called the Luger Express, and everybody would cheer for him coming out. And this was the big main event for him for SummerSlam. And I want to say it was SummerSlam 95, maybe 95, 94, one of those. But yeah, it was this big thing where everybody thought, oh, Luger's going to be the next Hogan. He'll win the belt. But instead, he does only win the match by countout, and very disappointing. You know, everybody was like, oh, he should have won the belt. But it was a very disappointing build, a very disappointing end to the whole feud. Siren, again, I know you said you were born in 1990, but do you remember the Lex Luger as being the next big thing in the 90s?
I actually no, but I do have something to add to that, because that was not the only time that we've seen people not win the title because of countouts, even though they've, or like because of something, even though they won, right? So like that is just a disappointing thing I feel in wrestling altogether. So I can understand where you're coming from on that, but I definitely don't remember. Nope. But yeah, like, kind of a silly thing. You win, but you don't win. I can see how that would irk people.
No, and yeah, no, it was a big deal, especially for us, you know, kids growing up in the 90s where we wanted to see the next big thing in pro wrestling. And we already lived through Hogan from like, I mean, I was born in 87, but I remember Hogan even at a young age at like 3-4 years old. So I'm like, all right, I've seen enough Hogan. Who else can we put on the TV that will win a title? And, you know, when Luger came in, I thought, okay, this could be the next big baby face. And he ends up winning by countout. And it was just very disappointing. And looking back at it as an adult and remembering it now, just like as a fan of that product, you're like, how could you pull an ending like that? Because like you said, Siren, we see it all the time now where people should win the title, but they win the match, but by either disqualification or countout, but they don't win the title. It's kind of a, I don't want to say faux pas, but it's kind of a thing they do in pro wrestling just because they want to continue the story. But after that, they didn't even continue the story of Luger versus Yokozuna. It just ended right there.
See, and that would be ultra disappointing. Like,
well, that's why Connor put it on his list, which I truly appreciate because I almost wanted to throw that out of my head. So good call on that one, Connor.
Heck yeah.
So for me, my second match would actually not too far away. It's almost 9 years ago. Royal Rumble 2014. Just basically in 2014, the big thing was Bryan Danielson or Daniel Bryan. He had the Yes movement going. People were cheering for him in the Royal Rumble, as well as people hoping about CM Punk, because CM Punk was also a fan favorite and everybody wanted him to win the Royal Rumble. He did not. Unfortunately, at the end of the Royal Rumble in 2014, we got the return of Batista, and Batista winning the 2014 Royal Rumble. Let me remind you, it got so bad that Roman Reigns, a heel at the time, was getting cheered to win the Royal Rumble in 2014. It was such a bad ending. That's basically when I was like, I think I'm done with WWE because I don't know what they're doing with their product. Because you had two of the biggest baby faces on TV, which was Daniel Bryan, a.k.a. Bryan Danielson, and CM Punk. And Bryan Danielson had the hottest thing going with the Yes movement. Granted, he got the payoff at WrestleMania 30, but it was kind of a slow build that I was just like, I'm done. I'm going to go find something else to watch for a while. But to me, that is another sad ending to a pay-per-view, especially a Royal Rumble. Siren, do you remember that Royal Rumble and how your feelings were when Batista won?
Okay. I stopped watching in like 2002, 2008, 2009. And even then, like, it was a very like casual watch at that point. But I do remember my brother losing it, and I was like, I thought he was acting now. Like, aren't we doing like, wasn't he going to act? Like, isn't that what? And yeah, no, I don't know. I love Batista, but I liked him as, I don't know, he was just like the big guy when I was younger, like just a big monster guy, and I didn't expect him to be back in wrestling. I currently prefer him acting as it is now. So, I mean, I think he probably should just have stayed doing that. But yeah, I wasn't around for it, but I definitely remember my brothers talking about it. Like, why? Why is he back? Why did he win? Why? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like, So
No, and yeah, no, absolutely. It was one of those things where, yeah, you were like, why is Batista back? He went off to Hollywood. He did
yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy. Everyone thought he was going to be a big Hollywood star like The Rock, and yet he comes back and wins the Royal Rumble. Connor, what was your thought? And even today, we see it now. What are your thoughts on people that leave, like part-timers that go to Hollywood, or either just part-time wrestlers in general, coming back and getting the push like we saw in 2014 with Batista?
So I like Batista. He's always been one of my favorites. Again, I didn't watch this live, but a lot of this I went back and watched. I got out of wrestling in 2011, so I missed everything of Punk when he really got hot. I missed everything. I had to go back and watch everything that I missed. But rewatching this, like first CM Punk gets out, and the crowd's already booing the whole match, and then Brian Danielson, he gets out, and then it was like the hell with this match. Like it was it wasn't a good. They didn't seem the fans unhappy. Part timers coming back, kind of like The Rock, we're getting pretty here recently. The Rock come back on Raw. He basically called out Roman Reigns. Some question is he gonna take Cody Rhodes' WrestleMania spot like The Rock did CM Punk 2014, I believe. I believe it was 2014 Royal Rumble. They went against each other. 2013, something like that.
The Rock and Cena, yeah, it was 2013, and then
Punk and
You think that's a possibility?
Well, it was 2012, 2013. They both wrestled against each other, I think, 2 times.
Because I would love Cody to be in.
Like sometimes it's a good thing, so you get rematches like you never thought you'd get. But on the other hand, you got guys who's worked the whole year, like 365 days a year, and then someone who comes and works 2 days a year comes and just takes it. It's really stupid. I wouldn't do that, but I can understand why they would do it because of business purposes. But at that time, I think Brian Danielson, whatever you want to call him, I feel like he was making more money for WWE than Batista probably was at that time because like the whole Yes movement, like that had been a top merchandise seller. Like even Conor the Crusher, like that was probably the biggest Brian Danielson fan. If anyone knows who that is, I'd like to have seen him watch Brian Danielson wrestle in AEW. If anyone knows who Conor the Crusher is, yeah, I can see why they do it and why they don't. Personally, if I was booking it, I would not do that. But yeah, that Royal Rumble match was disappointing watching years later.
Right, and I agree. It is the thing where I gotta say I also like Batista. I just don't think it was the right moment for him to get pushed like that over people that had like being fan favorites or had an opportunity to win their first titles in WWE or in any promotion. But I do kind of see the money aspect of it. We see it now with The Rock returning and possibly taking Cody's spot. Although I don't believe it. I think that match is made to push Elimination Chamber in Australia because word is that Australia really wanted a big matchup to sell out their arena, and bringing The Rock into Wrestle Roman at Elimination Chamber is going to be a seller. That's going to sell out because no matter where you go in this world, everybody knows who Dwayne The Rock Johnson is. It is the craziest thing, just like everybody knows who Batista is now. So I think that was probably the wrong decision to do. Real quick before we move on, let's get to some of these comments we have in our chat here. Thank you all for listening and commenting as well. We do appreciate you guys. Heyo, Fox Tenso. Fox, thank you for joining us. Devin Rooms. All Out 2020 was the worst pay-per-view. I didn't really enjoy All Out 2020, but we're going to get to our worst pay-per-views here in a little bit, Devin. So thank you for mentioning that one. Can only imagine how scared the bets were. So Yokozuna is 600 pounds, was 600 pounds. God rest his soul. Yes, he was a big boy, and he was Samoan. So the fact that he was playing a Japanese character was very funny, very, very ironic. Let's see. Who else do we got here? Dusty. Yes. Dusty. I don't know who King Courtsey is referring to with Dusty Rhodes. I don't know.
Championships that were not won, but won.
That's right. That is right. Yes. So when he won I think it was the WWF title that he was gonna win, but he won by count out anyways. But it's just him still holding the title that he never won. So yes, thank you for reminding me there, Siren.
No worries, I got you.
We got so many comments. Yes, and so who else? Let's see. I'm only a couple years younger than Sai, but when I was young, watching wrestling, singles competitors weren't doing anything for me because tag teams were thriving. That's true. There was a lot of good tag team wrestling, and Ghost, as anybody who watches this podcast knows, I'm a huge fan of tag team wrestling. Still am. It's one of my favorite styles of pro wrestling is tag team wrestling. I don't like so much the Fatal 4-Ways anymore because that's just too much to watch, but I like solid team against team tag team matches. So those are the kind of ones that I enjoy. And Devin, Hogan is involved in a lot of these. Yeah. And again, I'm going to say this, dislike Hogan, but it's also his old ego is why he's on a lot of these lists. So, hey, Red, thank you for joining us tonight. Rock's going to put over Roman for sure. Oh, yeah, Roman's not losing that title, I believe, until WrestleMania 40 for Cody. I still think the plan is for Cody to finish the story. Rated you guys on Twitch, by the way, to show love. Thank you, Ghost, for doing that. Appreciate that. And I believe we're trying to get someone... Brandon. Hello, Brandon. Can you hear us?
I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me?
Oh, absolutely. I am told this is your first time on the show. Welcome.
Well, thank you. He's been trying to meet me on here for a while, but schedules are what they are. So here we are finally.
Absolutely. Well, now that you're here, let me get to you real quick. As you know, we were talking about disappointing endings in matches in professional wrestling history. Is there one match on your mind that you can remember that you just thought, wow, that match did not end the way I thought it was, and that was very disappointing?
Sting, Hogan, Starrcade. First one that pops in my mind.
And absolutely go delve into it. Can you pinpoint certain points, why it was good, why it wasn't good, and why it ended disappointingly?
Just the buildup. I mean, that's the longest buildup in history for a while until the Bloodline came along. And with that buildup and the anticipation of Sting entering the ring once again, for it to end the way it did, really kind of started the downfall of WCW, in my opinion.
There you go.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you had potential there with Sting and Hogan in that match and everything. And it for me, it was slow paced. I didn't like it. It was also just, I felt like they didn't click at all in the ring. I felt like there were some missteps in that match. And honestly, from what that was to where Sting is now, I honestly think I would put that past him just because he had so many good matches later on. Even in his run in WWE, he had good matches. It's just he was working pretty poor storylines in WWE, and he wasn't put in the place that he needed to be as a legend.
Which also goes back to the reason that he never wanted to go to begin with.
Exactly.
I mean, so, he always thought they would use him wrong and use him away to kind of step on WCW and the legacy even more. And he was unfortunately proven right.
Right. And that's a reason why a lot of people, when WCW shut their doors, did not go to WWE until later on when they needed the money, or they were told by WWE, hey, we'll put you in the Hall of Fame. You come wrestle for us, Connor, do you remember the Sting Hogan match at Starrcade?
I'm going to say...
I know you're a little young, but do you ever go back and watch it?
I'm going to say yes and no. Because I watched a lot of Sting and Hogan. I probably have watched it. I watched a lot of Sting. And, yeah, I'd say, yeah, I probably have watched it. Just by everything we're talking about, yeah, everything Hogan probably is underwhelming when it comes to a big moment in history. He finds a way to ruin it, like Bret Hart, just anything. The whole thing goes to hell if he's involved.
Yes. Siren, do you recall? I know you said you were born in 1990 and you more so newer kind of wrestling, but going back to history, do you ever go back and watch matches like the one with Starrcade 97?
No, no, definitely not. And the only time that I ever went back and like rewatched product was when I first got into AEW, and I started like 8 months or almost a year after it started. I just went back and rewatched everything. Like, but um, but no, I don't remember that. And I don't remember my brothers losing it about it, because like that's what it was on every day. Like there was never a wrestling program missed in our house, and yeah, I was in the living room, but I had 6 older brothers and my parents to like chill with, but I don't ever remember them freaking out about it, to the best of my knowledge.
Right. No, for us fans that grew up watching the Monday Night Wars and watching some of these matches,
Yeah, oh yeah.
a lot of us were like looking forward to some of these matchups in WCW happening, especially when you see some people like Hogan and Flair and Nash and Hall coming over to WCW. You're like, crap, this is going to change the whole landscape of pro wrestling. And instead, it just gave us very odd and just very disappointing matches and storylines. Like late 99s, early 2000s WCW, it was nothing but NWO, and it kind of played out. It's kind of like the Bloodline today. The Bloodline is a good story, but I feel like it just needs to be done completely. But I can understand where, people are like, I don't go back and watch those matches just because I've been told about them and I don't want to experience them. So
And I got the mad ADHDs, so like buckling down and watching it is
right. Well, we'll go back. We're on our final match pick for disappointing matches. So we're back to you, Siren. What is your final match on your list that you were disappointing with?
I saved this one for last because I love you, Connor. And it's a CM Punk match. That's why. And CM Punk won, and that's why I was disappointed. So, oh wait, was this the first one that I touched, or was it not? Wait, did I hit this one already?
No, you have not mentioned CM Punk yet.
Okay, yeah, okay, no, I didn't. Okay, yeah, so it was a CM Punk and Eddie Kingston match, actually, and I wasn't a fan because the promos that led up to it, for me, where I understand what you're trying to do, Punk, and like be that motivational guy and stuff, but I felt that the promos that he cut towards Eddie Kingston were absolutely horrendous. I thought they were extremely disrespectful, and where he was trying to motivate as somebody who comes from like the straight edge society and all this, like, yeah, sobriety. You're a real prick for talking the way that you did to somebody who's trying to get better. And I really wanted Kingston to win because of those promos. I was just like, oh man, I just want to punch this guy in the face like the entire time. And he was trying to build like, I know you're better. But when you're talking to somebody who's like recovering or trying to recover, it was just really trashy the way he went about it. And I really wanted Kingston to kick his ass. And it was a bloody match, and it was awesome. Like there was some amazing spots, and you really did think Kingston was going to pull it off. And then the fact that Punk had to do the second go to sleep was awesome. I will admit that. But at the end, solidly disappointed.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people thought that maybe Kingston would pull one over on CM Punk. But obviously you see it with Punk going over on Darby Allin. You didn't think he was going to lose to Kingston. Brand new to AEW, trying to get these matches in. And it was a good story. And everybody was like, you know what? We love Punk, but what if Kingston pulls the upset? Jason, do you remember this match, and what was your take from it?
I remember it a little bit, but I'm not a big Eddie Kingston fan. So normally I get up and go wash dishes or hit the fast forward button if he's on TV. Yeah, I'm 51 years old, and when I grew up in the age of the guys that if you didn't watch wrestling and you saw them out somewhere, you might not know who they are, but you knew they were somebody, if that makes any sense. And Eddie Kingston, to me, looks like the drunk dad at a baseball soccer game that's going to get into it with another parent. So I don't see anything bad. Try to enjoy all the wrestling and not knock anything that's not my cup of tea. But I do turn my head on certain people.
And that's the nice thing, is that you have that option, you have that opinion as a wrestling fan, that you can dislike, not like somebody as a wrestler or their style, and prefer somebody else. And I'm with you there too, Jason. Like I said, I grew up during the the Monday Night War era, but I also had ECW and WCW and W and all of these, and I kind of remember that where if you went out and you saw these guys, you kind of thought they looked familiar, but you weren't sure and you didn't know how to approach them, But I kind of agree that there's some wrestlers today that do kind of remember that golden age of wrestling, like the 70s, the 80s, even the 90s of wrestling. I mean, someone like I'll say him, MJF. MJF understands the whole history of pro wrestling and what it means to keep kayfabe and just be this person that respects the industry and sport. I think that's why he's well respected in the industry, because he's a young guy, but he still knows the lineage of professional wrestling. So if that makes sense to you,
absolutely.
Jason.
And I agree with Siren, because I thought CM was a punk was a prick since he come out griping that he actually got to wrestle the Undertaker at WrestleMania opposed to getting the main event, which was a lot of times looked at as a bigger spot than what the main event was per se. And he was upset about that spot. And I'm just like, dude, okay, I'm done with you. So
it was all in all disappointing.
He'll get attention anytime he opens his mouth, and that's good for whatever company he's going to be in, but a prick
Agreed.
nonetheless.
Well, let me move on to Connor, because I know Connor is one of the biggest CM Punk fans in the world.
I kept this.
What did you think of Siren's pick for Kingston and Punk? Do you think Kingston should have gone over Punk?
No. Punk debuted in All Out, so there's no way he's going to lose to Eddie Kingston. At that time, Darby was a bit more of a star in AEW than Kingston, so it's more of a warm-up match for Punk, really. I was there for one of their main promos. I thought the promos were really good with CM Punk. It really went back on ROH. I kind of wish they owned the ROH rights then, because I could have shown a lot of the stuff back, when they were in Honor. But yeah, I thought it was a good match, though. Those were one of my favorite CM Punk ties that he wore in that match. Full Gear 2021. Yeah, 2021 that was. Yeah, that was a good match. Yeah, I didn't see Kingston winning even a slightest really. Because just by the matches he was going, he was on this undefeated streak. So you knew that they were going to be building him into the world title picture at some point. But yeah, I thought the match was good they had. Yeah.
Like I said, I went super personal with my list. Like, the reason I'm disappointed is very personal reasons for all of my picks. Even my wrestler leaving, which I hope we can get to.
Yeah, we'll get there soon.
I know.
Connor, let's move on to your last pick for the match that you thought was very disappointing.
So I am going to go with I had two choices, but I think Adam's already got my third one. Going off the fly, because I've written them down. But I'm going to go, I guess I'll go, since on the CM Punk thing, CM Punk and The Rock, I guess. Again, I didn't watch any of this back. I started watching wrestling 2011-ish. Then I got back in 2015. Like, I got to wrestle once Brock Lesnar returned, and then I got back in once he was still feuding with Seth Rollins. So that was kind of weird. But yeah, just going back and watching the summer of Punk and his whole 434 days of being a world champion. I feel like he could have. The Rock really. We were talking about this earlier about part-time wrestlers just coming in and swooping in and just taking shots, which, it was supposed to be once in a lifetime match, John Cena and The Rock, but they wanted the world title surrounded in that match. Because the first one didn't, right? It didn't have the world title involved.
No.
So I feel like they wanted to get the world title involved in that feud with Cena and Rock, because actually was watching a seminar with Eugene, and he said, and actually this is probably true, that John Cena and The Rock was has made the most money in WWE history. That match made the most money of all time. So I get why they would want to go up, like like next year follow up on it. But for me, I'd have liked to see CM Punk won, but he ended up going against Undertaker at WrestleMania. I remember him saying that that's basically like that's his WrestleMania main event, going against the Undertaker. Even though he lost, I thought it was a really good story. You know, was Paul Bearer involved in that story? I believe he was. He came back for a little bit.
Well, no, his memory was involved in that matchup because he had passed away. And Punk was using fake ashes, and I think Punk even said he was very uncomfortable doing that, using fake ashes to represent Paul Bearer.
Yeah, I remember him doing that, him throwing it all on the Undertaker, and mine would be Punk and The Rock.
Punk and The Rock. Jason, let me ask you. I know you're old school kind of wrestling, but with the newer style, like the newer kind of stuff in wrestling, you know, most recent, like The Rock and Cena. You know, we've seen it many times before, where you get to see Sting versus Flair, or you know, you see these guys trying to pass the torch off in pro wrestling. Do you think that feud with The Rock and Cena, that second match, do you think it needed a title at all, like Connor said, or do you think they could have just done it one time and been done?
They were going to give Cena his win back, but it did not need a title per se, because Cena was still full time at that time, and The Rock being part time. No, they had to give Cena his win back, and no, it didn't need a title.
Right. No, and I agree. I definitely think it didn't need a title. I think what you were looking at is more of like not only Cena getting his win back, but another way to outdo your WrestleMania before. And I think that's always the goal with WWE, is they always want to outdo their previous WrestleMania. They want to make it bigger, better. They want to sell out more. That's the biggest thing with WWE. And now you're seeing it now with all these international shows. They want to sell out arenas all over the world. They want to make that money. They want to get that grown. So I definitely agree. I don't think you needed the title for that second Rock and Cena match. And obviously CM Punk, regardless of how you feel about the guy, definitely felt kind of on the outside of that whole thing and felt like collateral for that whole feud with Cena and Rock for the title.
Well, I can see where he was coming from. He had been champion for 450 days at that time, just to drop it to The Rock to set up that match. I mean, I get it, but doesn't mean how I change I feel about it nonetheless.
No, and I agree. And like I said, that's your total opinion on the guy. I mean, there's people that hate him. There's people that love him. You know, I for a while, I was a big CM Punk fan, you know, and then, you know, he has all this backstage drama that just seems to follow him, and he goes back to WWE. I hope nothing but best for the guy, but I don't have any faith that he can stay the way that he is right now in WWE. I don't know what's going to happen with CM Punk then.
Time will tell.
Exactly. Jason, I know we're only going to get 2 from you, but if you want, do you have a second match that you felt like it was just a disappointing ending all around?
Yeah, and I'll date myself with this one. When Ric Flair came back from the WWF to the NWA, a lot of people don't know he was able to appear on TV but not wrestle for 30 days. They set up a Barry Windham feud for the world title and the big gold belt at the time. And the match, Flair was supposed to go over, but the way they did it, Barry did not kick out of the figure 4 when he was supposed to. And you could tell the ref and Flair was just like, oh, well, 3 count done. And, you know, Barry just rolled out of the ring and walked off, but he didn't kick out when he was supposed to.
What do you do about it then? Right?
Yeah, no, I honestly kind of remember that. It's like, because I watch a lot of Flair documentaries and stuff like that. I mean, because it's Ric Flair. Regardless if you like the guy or not, you watch his documentary because the guy was something different in pro wrestling, you know. And I remember going back watching I just watched the Iron Claw movie, you know, and his stuff.
Yeah, I went and saw that 2 days ago.
Yeah, no, and watching that, and I don't care what people say, the guy who portrayed Rick actually did pretty well portraying Ric Flair. But yeah, no, his storylines with, you know, with the Von Erichs, his feuds with Dusty were great. But yeah, no, I kind of remember his feud with Wyndham. And honestly, that was more so awkward than anything else.
Very awkward.
Very awkward. It's almost like nobody knew what was going on. You see it nowadays too in all pro wrestling. You see awkward finishes. I'll give you an example. Just recently, Mox losing the title to Ray Phoenix after suffering that concussion, and everybody was confused.
That was rough.
You're like, that's awkward. It looks dangerous. And Phoenix just won when I think he wasn't supposed to, and that was an audible. But back then, in that kind of wrestling, if an accident happened, like the old school NWA, they just rolled with it and they just come up with a story with it the next week. And I think that's why old school wrestling is some of my favorite, especially old school tag team wrestling. I think that's why
we got tickets to Revolution, which is special for me because I was actually at Starrcade 83. So
wow.
as a 10-year-old child sitting in nosebleed seats, but I was there.
Heck yes.
All right, so I'm going to bring this up because you brought that up, Jason, but I'm going to bring this question up. I want everybody to answer because it just popped in my head. We'll go one by one. What event would you have loved to gone to in the past when you were a kid? Oh. What wrestling event? Jason just said he went to Starrcade 83, which, by the way, I would have loved to gone to. But Siren, what's a pay-per-view or a show you'd want to go to in the past that as a kid?
Mick Foley, Undertaker, Hell in a Cell.
King of the Ring, 1998, huh?
Yeah. I remember because, like I said, it was always on the TV and stuff like that. And so I remember sitting and we were all in the living room and I wasn't really like actively paying attention. And then all of a sudden it started. And I was an Undertaker fan. And so like I'm watching and I'm like, this is scary. This is so scary. This is so scary. And I just was like, it like, I don't know, it just blew my mind. And to be there again, as like, I've been an energy vampire my entire life. Like the mood of the room affects my mood entirely. So like live shows, concerts, music, anything just gets me going. And I could only imagine the energy in that room. Like everything just would have stopped for like just a split second. Like, and I just, that would have been cool to be like in that energy. I don't know. Have been so neat.
No, that match definitely does live on in infamy, and I think every wrestling fan will tell you that moment in time was probably one of the most shocking moments and one of the most craziest matches they've ever seen. And I don't think you can ever replicate just a moment like that, just the match itself, because it felt like everything was on the fly during that match. Like I remember they were interviewing Taker and Mick Foley about it, and even Taker's like, Foley looked at me and said, throw me off. And Taker didn't want to do it because he didn't want to hit the guy. But he's like, do it. And he threw him, and that line by Jim Ross, oh my God, by God, he's broken in half. Mm-hmm. Like he killed him. By God, he's probably broken in half. Like I will not forget that moment watching that pay-per-view.
I bet everybody has goosebumps right now.
Because Jim Ross was like, he killed him. I'm like, no, he didn't. Stop, Jim. Like it was just insane. Connor, what pay-per-view or event would you have loved to gone to when you were a younger kid? And you are muted. There you go.
Yeah, it's hard for me to pick this one match but anything with Andre the Giant, really. I'd have loved to see Andre the Giant wrestle. Probably him and Hogan. That's one that stands out for Andre the Giant. Or when Andre the Giant and Big John Studd, because I heard that he whipped the hell out of him in that match. But also the Montreal Screwjob, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, that'd have been kind of cool to actually been there. But either that or anything with Andre the Giant, because that's just larger than life. Like everyone talks about how tall he is. I actually want to see him in person. Like, yeah, you can go by a statue, but I want to see the real deal. Andre the Giant. So that'd have been cool to gone back and seen Andre go against Iron Sheik. Like a lot of these guys, like they would try to cross him in the ring, he'd tear the hell out of them. Like if you watched the HBO documentary, Big John Studd, like after the match, he told Shane McMahon was telling the story of Vince McMahon, but like after the match, he just left and got his bags and ran out because he really thought that Andre was going to kill him. Anything with Andre the Giant or the Montreal Screwjob.
You know, if I go back, I think I would have loved to gone to the first WrestleMania as a kid, just because it was like the first biggest thing Vince McMahon did when he bought the company from his dad. And just to see the spectacle of it and all the people involved, just to see, you know, Jimmy Snuka, Hulk Hogan, Mr. T, Roddy Piper, all these guys in the ring, you know, at one show. And also, like you, Connor, I would have loved to gone to see an Andre the Giant match because I love big guy wrestlers. I think they're awesome. I think a lot of them can work really well with the small guys. I mean, you look at someone like Brock. Brock Lesnar says he loves working with the smaller guys because they put on great matches with each other. And so I think I would have loved to either gone to WrestleMania 1 or, like you said, Connor, any Andre the Giant show or pay-per-view. So for my last match on this list, I actually am going to go with what Connor had just mentioned is the Montreal Screwjob. I thought it was very disappointing, just because it really, and honestly, it should be one of the better ones because it was the catalyst of the change in pro wrestling. But for me, it was disappointing just because of all the backstage politics that you see in pro wrestling. And I understand that with pro wrestling, backstage politics are going to happen. It's happened for decades in pro wrestling. I mean, based on the movie The Iron Claw, I did not know that Fritz von Erich, the only reason why he was so like that was because he wanted to get back at the NWA for not letting him ever win a title. And so it kind of messed with his head and kind of made him kind of treat his sons the way that he did. And so with the Montreal Screwjob, I felt like it was a backstab to Bret, putting all this heart and love into his company. And even talking before the match and telling Vince, listen, I don't want to drop to Shawn here in Canada because it's my hometown, but I don't mind dropping it to him at a Raw. If we do Monday Night Raw, I'll drop the title to him there in the States. I don't care. But I don't want to lose in my home country because that's just bad on me being the hero in my country. So for me, that just left a bad taste in my mouth with that whole thing. And I didn't know how to feel after it. I really didn't because I liked Bret and I liked Shawn's young boy, up and coming bad boy kind of persona. I was like, oh, he's got some skill too. He can fly. He's got some good moves. But after that whole thing, and I was like, what is going on? And then I realized that it was a screw job. I just felt disappointed. So, Jason, what was your thoughts on the Montreal screw job?
Similar to yours, but not a lot of sympathy for Bret. It just goes to show you what happens when a wrestler gets creative control, even though it was the only last 30 days of his contract where he had control over his exit. But at the end of the day, when your boss tells you to lay down, that's the right thing to do on your way out, no matter where they tell you to do it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Siren, if you remember the Montreal Screwjob, what was your take on it? And did you feel indifferent about either guy or the whole situation?
Okay, so funny story is my dad looks exactly like Shawn Michaels. Okay, and like freakishly so. To the point where people have stopped him when he was younger and been like autograph, right? So. And I was young. And as I mentioned, my mom is like the most massive Bret Hart fan. So I remember this, but the only reason that I remember this is because it was like my mom's favorite wrestler versus my dad. And so I remember the complete disappointment. My mom like broke down. She was so upset. And so then I was confused because I was like, like what's going on? I thought, he's the hero again. We were in Canada. Like this isn't, and so I was very disappointed, but mostly because I just didn't understand. I was like, why in Canada? Like why? So yeah, I was sad, but it was mostly just like residual sad.
Yeah, no, and that's my always thought, because, as someone from Canada that has all these lineage of great pro wrestlers that come from Canada, the Hart family, Edge, Christian, like all these, Chris Jericho, you have the lineage of all these wrestlers coming from Canada. As a fan of the Canadian wrestlers, it must have hurt like for the fans to be like, this is just wrong, but where the States, they're like, all right, it's pro wrestling. It's part of the story. I guess we'll roll with it. Connor, with you, what's your take? Do you think Bret Hart really got the bad rap on that, or do you think, like Jason said, he did it happened because he wasn't following his boss's orders?
It's kind of everyone's in the wrong. So I believe did they tell Bret Hart that he's going over in the match? Like, wasn't that then?
Yes, and originally they told him that's fine. We'll let you go over then. But then behind closed doors, I believe it was Sean, Vince, and Earl Hebner, the referee. They were the only three that knew the ending of that match. They changed it behind closed doors without telling anybody else.
So in a way, I do agree with, because like that's just something. I mean, at least tell him that he's not going over. I mean, golly, could have prevented getting spot on the face, and Vince could have got knocked out. And then he wouldn't have had to have security a few months later when they were talking about Owen Hart. If anyone like remembers that, whatever happened with that. But in a way, it is Vince's company. So if that's what he wanted, then that should have happened. But Vince made his decision and then changed it, and then everyone kind of looks bad in this. I can't really pick anyone that. If I had to favorite anyone, probably more Bret Hart, but. Yeah, no one really looks innocent or like they did the right thing. Or I'll say more so Bret Hart because he, like they just changed it, right? Because like that's happened to me, like refereed matches. Not so personal, but to other people I've seen that. I'm not gonna get into that because we'll be here for hours if I talk about all that. But I get where Bret Hart's coming from. It's nerve-wracking, but I don't think anyone was in the right. But rather go with your side, be Bret Hart.
Well, I'll say this on it. The reason I say it the way I did was out of all the things I've seen and read was that Bret was told several different ways to drop the title, and he kept saying no. It wasn't just a one-off of yeah, we'll put you over, and then behind closed doors, no. They went over several different scenarios that he shot down, and Vince was still afraid from where Medusa had thrown the women's title in the trash can. So Bret was given plenty of options to drop it however he felt would have been right in Canada, and he turned them all down. And that's when they did what they did.
No, and I totally agree with that too, Jason. And like you said, Connor, it's kind of a double-edged sword because nobody was in the right. And life kept going on, Bret still went to WCW. Vince still was running WWF the way that he wanted it to. Sean was their Golden Boy champion now. So, and it kind of project out to the Attitude Era that we got after that pay-per-view. And so we're about to move on now to our next category, which is disappointing pay-per-view overall. We've talked about several matches on the show so far, but overall, based on the card and some of the backstage stuff and just all around, we'll start with you, Siren. What pay-per-view in your mind was the most disappointing pay-per-view in the history of pro wrestling?
I see, and that's the thing is I don't have one that's disappointing overall. And if it was, I'd have to go with, was it All Out that we were talking 2021? 2020. Yeah. I mean, but the most recent and most like literally the most disappointing thing would be World's End, and I'm still gonna be stuck on that. I'm gonna be stuck on that until something else gets me hurt just as much as that did. And again, Adam, I understand why they did it. You and I have had this conversation. I knew the moment that he lost. I literally was like, okay, I'm really excited for the build up again, but that did not help the crushing, and nothing else in that pay-per-view mattered to me after that. And that's why I picked it, because it was such a solid pay-per-view, and I was so looking and I didn't even care that we all knew it was going to be Adam Cole, and and I was still excited for the reveal. I was how are they going to do it? It's going to be so awesome. And then that happened, and I'm like, it ruined, almost like, not ruined, I don't want to say ruined because that's horrible, because it was a solid pay-per-view, but it definitely sucked all of the happiness out of me. It was like a dementor just came and was like, you don't get joy anymore, and that was that. And when Adam Cole did his whole thing, and I was like, I don't care, like, I don't care. And I felt like I really wanted to care. And yeah, so I'm gonna go with World's End. And not that it was as a whole, just I definitely I was left so disappointed that it affected the whole show for me.
Right. Connor, what's your take on Siren's pick with World's End? I know we mentioned at the beginning of the show
I
and
know.
how that was basically the catalyst for the topic tonight.
It really was.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I agree. I feel like that was the one pay-per-view in AEW history that they left the fans
Like,
disappointed. Like I never in AEW's existence heard a pay-per-view, and after the match, fans chant bullshit, like they wanted the refund kind of type thing. Which they were in MJF's hometown, so it kind of sparked the fire a little bit. But overall, the pay-per-view was really good. As a whole, it was really good. I thought the Joe and MJF match itself was really good.
solid.
I'm surprised MJF did what he did with all his injuries too. He picked up Samoa Joe and did all this, and I think he had he had multiple injuries, so he did really good for what he could do. But yeah, I agree with what Siren said.
Just joy
Jason,
sucking.
how about you, Jason? If you watched World's End, what was your take from it, and why Siren picked it as the worst, just the worst feeling in the world?
There's so many reasons at the end of that pay-per-view that everybody just kind of went, ugh. To me, my opinion was with the reveal and you put Joe over clean. It was like, it just sucked the wind out of my sails just to let him choke MJF out for them to come in the ring and just do nothing. And from a company standpoint, with the whole CM Punk thing and him going over Joe clean at Wembley, if you're going to put the title on him, you definitely can't have him take it clean this quick, in my opinion. And I was kind of like her. I was like, ugh. So that's what I feel about it.
I'm sorry, guys. I mean, I know it's fresh and we totally just talked about it, but it still hurts me.
I agree, and that's the point, So go ahead, Connor.
Oh, I was just saying that if it wasn't for that ending, we probably wouldn't be having this topic. So
No. Well, there we go.
Connor, what about you? What's the overall pay-per-view that you thought was just a disappointing pay-per-view in general?
Oh, that's even tough. I don't want to say All Out 2020 because I keep mentioning that.
Just play.
Yeah, because that pay-per-view was a complete disaster. I guess for me, I got back into wrestling in 2015, and I feel like WWE after WrestleMania 33 when the Hardys returned, after that everything went to I don't know, it was just very different. I guess I'd say Extreme Rules 2017, I believe it was. I know it's a wild one, but it was called Extreme Rules, and there wasn't anything extreme really on the pay-per-view. I mean, why are you calling it Extreme Rules if we're just having regular matches with no extreme in it? So you should just call it No Rules, because I don't know. That was like, and that's when the WWE Network was around, and I canceled my subscription after that. Like, I was pissed. Like that point where I was about out of wrestling. If it wasn't for AEW, I probably would have gotten out of wrestling at that point, because 2017, 2018, like, I'm done with this. Like, this is, like, I was about to get out of wrestling, but rumors of a new company starting. At first, the owner was Shad Khan, Jericho, and Jim Ross, which was kind of funny. But it was Tony Khan. So if it wasn't for AEW, I probably would not be watching wrestling.
Thank you.
But I'm going to go with Extreme Rules 2017.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that pay-per-view where most of the matches were very tamed. Like, it wasn't as extreme as it was back in the day. I mean, even some of the earlier ECW pay-per-views, basically because they were a small company, do whatever the hell they want. And I enjoyed those Guilty as Charged and Heat Wave and all those pay-per-views I just freaking loved from ECW because they had just Extreme Rules just in general, in total. Jason, do you remember Extreme Rules 2017? And do you think that was just like the shift of WWE going to the PG and just basically ruining just all those extreme moments?
No, I do not remember that one in general. The first one night stand, hell, even the second one night stand they did was really well for WWE produced product as ECW. Then after that, they just put their foot on it and killed it. And I quit those. I just quit paying any attention.
Extreme.
So Siren, and what about you? Do you remember the change of guard when WWE went PG and basically anytime they mentioned Extreme Rules or anything, it was just disappointing?
That I do. And I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't active. Well, a little bit, I guess, for the whole switch over to PG, but it just, I grew up with the craziness, right? Like the only time that I really, really was like super into it was when I was watching people like the Hardys and stuff and like jumping off of stuff or like crazy theatrical, like really, the Kane and Sting or Kane and Undertaker feud. Awesome, but yeah, I like the extreme. It's also why I'm a huge fan of Jon Moxley. May not want to have him full-time in AEW doing his thing, but when he does his thing, there's a place for that, and I love it. So yeah, I could see how that would be disappointing, especially with Extreme Rules like in the title, and you go in, it's like the exploding barbed wire match. You're like, oh, this is gonna be so awesome, and then you're like, oh. Or not, like, I guess. So I could see how that would be super disappointing.
No, and I agree. I think once WWE went to that PG route and kind of tamed everything back, I think that's when you realize that there's no remnants of the Attitude Era back in WWE. Jason, what about you? What is one pay-per-view that you can recall that you just watched it and you go, that was just not a good pay-per-view overall?
We'll go back to where I started. Starrcade 1997. Couldn't tell you any other matches on there besides Sting and Hogan. But that pay-per-view and the finish ruined an 18-month storyline. And growing up on the NWA, I was always partial to WCW, even when it sucked really badly. And as a channel flipper back between Nitro and Raw, I think I went about 3 weeks without watching Nitro after that pay-per-view because I'm like, they can't do anything for this. They ruined it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Connor, what's your take on Starrcade 97?
That sounds like Vince Russo and Bischoff stuff. Like that's the good old stuff that they do. Nice. Don't remember too much about that pay-per-view. There's some WCW stuff I haven't went back and watched. But yeah, I could see, WCW has done some bad endings to some pay-per-views. Kind of like the one in Adam's background. But yeah.
No, that was a Nitro in his background.
Yeah, that was the Poke of Death Nitro.
Well, was that the main event of that show?
Yes.
Well, so at least the show probably sucked.
Actually, if you go back and watch a lot of Nitros and WCW pay-per-views with the cruiserweights of a young Jericho, young Rey Mysterio, the beginning were great. And a lot of the endings were just like World's End.
Disappointing.
Now you said that, I'm actually going to go back and rewatch that pretty soon.
I'll check it out myself.
I don't remember too much.
Yeah, and I'm with Jason. Like back in the early days of WCW, they had the cruiserweights, Rey Mysterio, Chris Jericho. Hell, they had Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko. Like those guys they put on hell of a matches in early WCW, man. Like that was the reason I watched the early days of WCW. It wasn't the Hogan stuff or it was those cruiserweights because they were so much fun to watch. So I remember watching them in ECW before they went to WCW, and that's why I enjoyed them so much. And I was kind of indifferent because I'm like, oh man, they're not in ECW, but I'm glad they're going to a bigger stage to show their skills. But yeah, no, I honestly, I kind of want to erase Starrcade 97 from my mind, just because of that disappointing build and ending to that match. Siren, any takes on Starrcade 97, or are you
Nope.
gonna watch it?
I'm actually gonna check it out. That's like a super huge plus to this, by the way, you guys. I'm gonna thank you, just like randomly off topic, because I really do enjoy like going back but as with like all the like I mentioned the ADHDs, picking out stuff is really hard. Like I can't just look at the vast library and be like, what do I watch? Because I can't watch it all. I can't. So when you guys mention things like this, I'm like, I'm keeping notes, and I'm like, oh, cool. I'm gonna check that out. I'm gonna check that out. So thank you very much. But yeah, because I'm gonna go watch 97 now. That's awesome. I'm super stoked.
Yeah,
And
no,
at the same time, ready to be disappointed.
no, and honestly, that's that honestly
you have been warned.
I know, right? Thoroughly.
that's honestly a good pick, because with my pick, I'm sticking with WCW, Jason. And my worst pay-per-view, I think everybody's gonna know it, is Bash at the Beach 2000. Probably one of the worst things ever to happen in pro wrestling. Basically, the whole overshadow of Vince's ego, Hogan's ego, and Bischoff's ego basically ruined that entire pay-per-view. Just the fact that they had that drama, I can't even tell you how it overshadowed a lot of other stuff in that pay-per-view that I don't remember half of the matches in that pay-per-view. The only 2 matches I remember, well, actually 3, is Hogan and Jeff Jarrett, where Jarrett just laid down for him, and Hogan going on that rant. Obviously, the main event of where Jarrett put Booker T over, which was Vince Russo's original plan, was to put Booker T over. And then the other match I remember is the United States title between Mike Awesome and Scott Steiner, which was still a disappointing match. But that's because I remember Mike Awesome from ECW, so I pretty much followed him into WCW. But Bash at the Beach just left a really bad taste in my mouth as a wrestling fan. I think that's when I'm like, I'm done with WCW. Like, I don't want to watch this anymore. It's so disappointing.
So, Siren, do you know what happened in this?
I actually no. But I'm gonna tell you right now that I typed in Bash on Google. Okay, I typed in Bash on Google, and Bash at the Beach 2000 popped up. So I'm gonna dig that. I'm gonna look into that, because clearly it is something to look into.
What's Dark Side of the Ring?
If you can find,
is there the
4
Dark
different
Side of the Ring?
interviews from Vince Russo, Eric Bischoff, Hulk Hogan, and Jeff Jarrett. It's 4 completely different takes on that situation.
Yeah.
And
I'm so excited right now.
Believe, so.
Yeah,
I already have the episode pulled up for after this on my thing. I'm excited.
Vince Russo goes out there. Hogan said what he said. He goes back out there and just sets the whole thing on fire and ruins the whole damn thing.
The only thing they all agreed on was everything but everything up until Hogan's speaking had been agreed on in the back. It was when Russo come back out and cut his promo that caused the lawsuits.
Oh no, I'm so excited about this.
I'll be totally honest with you, Siren. I wouldn't be.
Yeah.
Because watching that pay-per-view and seeing all that drama unfold as a wrestling fan, it was kind of just like, this is reminiscent of the Montreal screw job. The disappointing ending of Starrcade 97. Like, it just
leave your big boy problems at home.
Like, you're like, oh my god, like right now, like I can't even watch WCW, you know, it was just a disappointing pay-per-view.
Well, you brought up Mike Awesome earlier, and I loved him in ECW, and WCW just destroyed him. WWF/E has always gotten a bad reputation for changing names, changing characters, because they want to own the IP and everything else. But there's just some of those guys that could have had so much more done with them, and turning a killer like Mike Awesome into the fat chick thriller was ridiculous. And between that, the transformation from Sting from the Surfer character that I was watching as a kid in 88, 89, get put over by Flair. And the transformation to the dark was so interesting. They did such a good job with it. And then Starcade happened. And it's just I was done.
What was the name of that group again?
Which one?
The one that Mike Awesome joined.
It wasn't a group. They called him the Fat Chick Thriller. And he was coming out to the ring. And I don't mean any disrespect to this to any thick people
With
that
some
might be
heavier
watching the
ladies.
show, but he had two girls, one on each side of him, that weighed more than he did, and they were about 5 foot tall.
Man, I wish I was around back in the day. I totally could have been that chick.
Think of Godfather being skinny and other chicks around him the way that they were bigger. That's
Oh, my
what
land.
Mike Awesome's character was.
Oh my.
That's stupid.
So
And he was, he wasn't a great promo, but he could definitely go in the ring. Him with Jeff Jones and ECW, I thought was a great presentation. And
I'm sorry. If you're gonna
WCW happened.
if you're
Go ahead,
gonna be something with that kind of gimmick, you need to be good on the mic. As somebody who has been a big girl, you need to know how to talk, because if you don't know how to talk, they're just gonna eat you alive. You're gonna be a guy walking around with big girls around you like that. You're gonna need to be good on the mic.
And
So
during this time, they were kind of dressing him like the Disco Inferno. So
oh no.
I will say this: the best feud he had in ECW and some of the best matches he had was with Tanaka. Him and Tanaka had some bangers in ECW.
they beat the dog crap out of each
Oh
other.
yeah, no, it was great. So we're gonna move on. We got one more category, and because we're starting to wind down here, we're gonna get to our last category. We're gonna go to wrestlers right now. You're one wrestler that you can choose that you thought, oh my God, this career is gonna be great. They're gonna do so much, and then it just ended in disappointment, or just ended the way you did not expect it, and was very sad or upset about it. So, Siren, who's one wrestler you thought whose career just ended disappointingly?
And this is a very personal pick for me as well. And it's actually really recent. And I don't know if her career is over, or if she just has currently stopped for now. But the bunny, I loved the bunny. And I feel like her last match, which was the 6-man, she only had 3 matches in 2023. I just felt like it was very disappointing. I mean, she was coming off of like an orbital bone injury, which is funny because it's the like same thing that Danielson had anyway. But yeah, so like she had been out injured for a bit, but I'm really disappointed. I thought that she as a singles wrestler in the females division could have done some really cool stuff. She was so out there and kooky, and I felt like given the opportunity to build her properly and shine her up a little bit, that she could have been a really fun character, and I wanted to see what she was going to do, and I was very excited to follow her into what she was going to become. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm definitely still excited to follow her content that she's making now, but it's going to be a little bit more costly, and 2, I don't think the ring gear is going to be as nice. So
Right.
yeah, it's disappointing for me.
Connor, what do you think about the bunny? Do you think she had some good matches and she never got the chance to shine?
Yeah, that that happens when you sign too many people, and also the woman doesn't get many opportunities. But she was injured, kind of injury prone there for a minute. So she was always injured. Something was going on, but she had a lot of good matches. Penelope Ford, Bunny versus TJ was really, really good.
Very good.
That was one of the best women's hardcore matches in AEW history. She's always had a good character, whether it was the Bunny or Allie. I've always called her Allie. I can't call her Bunny because that's how I knew her in TNA. Speaking of TNA, she could possibly show up back in TNA with Rosemary, as Rosemary is basically her best friend in wrestling.
I would love that, and I would watch
probably
it.
going to happen in January. As to whether they're building the story, that's probably going to happen. But yeah,
I hope so.
I think they could have used the Bunny a little bit better.
They really could have. It was disappointing. Her whole run was kind of disappointing when you could, like, because she had, as Connor mentioned, she did have those moments where it's like, wow, that was awesome. And I just felt like I don't know. It was disappointing.
Right. Jason, were you familiar with the Bunny, aka Allie's career, and what'd you think of it?
I liked her in TNA as Allie. The AEW roster has continued from day one, in my opinion, to be overloaded. He keeps bringing more and more people in, and people that deserve an opportunity aren't getting it. And I think she had a lot of more character development that we could have seen given more opportunity on TV. Injury prone, maybe, but so is Brian Danielson, and he's still on T every week. So, you know, I guess he may have offered another contract. She may have chosen to go do something else. You never know.
She's doing
Just because of the
OnlyFans right
lack
now.
of opportunity and TV time she was getting.
Right. No, and I agree. And sometimes people want to explore other options, especially some of the women, because they're like, I can't keep even some of the guys. They're like, we can't keep taking bumps like this. We want to try something else. We don't hurt ourselves. Someone like Dolph Ziggler, who just showed up in New Japan, where I thought Dolph was just going to go do some of his comedy stuff because the guy's funny. Well,
Yeah.
Nick Nemeth is really funny. And
Oh,
I thought
he's
he was
great.
like,
His comedy is great.
I thought he would go do some comedy stuff. I didn't think he'd be back in pro wrestling right away, kind of give his body a break, but he jumps right back into it with New Japan. So I think that Allie is a really good person to choose. Connor, who is your wrestler that you thought had a very disappointing ending to their career?
So mine's a way back. I think he wrestled in the 2000s, maybe with TNA, but Lex Luger. I mentioned that with Lex Luger and Yokozuna. He never won the big one. He went to WCW. He had a few good stuff. Him and Sting was really good. They had some good moments, but I don't think he got to be the big star like he should have been in WWE. Like I always liked Lex Luger and everything that he did, but I don't feel like he got the big superstar treatment because of some people. He's someone that I thought could have had they could have been a bigger star than what they were. But in my opinion, he's a legend. But when you really think about it, he could have been an even bigger name.
Yeah, no, Jason, and we talk about the golden age of wrestling and the 80s, the 90s, and Lex Luger was a big part of that. What was your thoughts on his career and the longevity of his career?
Well, you hear interviews with all the horsemen that said they told them it was not the proper time to turn him. They needed a little work with him a little bit more with his in-ring ability and stuff of that nature. But Crockett wanted so bad for Lex to be his version of Hulk Hogan. But then you also hear Lex talk now, and he will tell you that he was his own worst enemy. And probably the reason he didn't get put into those positions that Connor was talking about.
I completely forgot about some of those. Really, like we were talking about Yokozuna and Lex Luger a few moments ago, and that was kind of stupid. He wins the match, doesn't win the title, but if anyone knows his past with, I'm not going to mention her name, but you know what I'm talking about, Miss Elizabeth. I'm not going to get, if you want to get into it, I guess, but he had a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes of wrestling too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going back way before she ever came to WCW or he ever actually went to the WWF. I mean, he had issues in his first NWA / WDCW stint.
Yeah, no, I think Lex really, I think he was pushed in the spotlight too soon. Like I said earlier about the whole summer experience of the Lex Express, and this whole marketing plan of pushing him as the next big baby face. And in the end, he wins by count out. That's not really how you build a star, having them win by count out, not even win the title. Siren, I know you're you're probably going to research on Lex Luger.
I just did.
You just did.
Yeah.
Researching on him. What's your take on his career then after researching on him?
I feel Connor's totally right. That man had a lot going on outside the ring. That's very sad. Holy crow. Like, I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, oh, oh. Like, it just keeps getting sadder. Like, I don't know if I want to keep going.
Right.
Like,
But
he has turned into one of the most positive people.
I hear
will
he has a
ever hear.
podcast.
Yeah, he is. He's remarkable right now.
Yeah, that's fantastic because like holy crow, that man has been through a lot. Holy.
go ahead, Connor.
I met Lex Luger twice, and he's really. I didn't really know. I didn't really. Wish I could have got to see him wrestle. Like talking about going to see someone wrestle, I probably like to see Lex Luger, but he's a very nice person to meet. If you follow his Twitter, he's very positive person every day. Yeah, he's a very nice person to meet. I'd say, but he's definitely went through a lot, and it's great to see he's in a good mindset to this day.
That's wonderful.
If you just go to his Twitter, he's a very positive person.
I'm gonna follow you.
I always love it when wrestlers who, kind of had a bad past kind of redeem themselves and actually get more positive and actually do pretty much better nowadays, Jason, so who's one wrestler that you can think of that you thought their career was up and then it just ended disappointingly?
Tully Blanchard. Without a doubt. The Horsemen, as you know, were huge. And the Brain Busters did that stint in the WWF. They were supposed to come back and reform the Horsemen with this big push. And Tully failed a drug test and never wrestled on the big stage again. He did a stint at, I can't remember the name of the pay-per-view, where they were doing the Legends for WCW in like 94. He wrestled a singles match. And then he did a match or two in ECW, but that was pretty well it until he popped back up on AEW TV management. But
Yeah,
Tully was on top of the world and just gone.
Yeah, he ended up coming back and actually managing FTR. I know those two guys. They're the two guys. Like FTR is really big on legends, especially guys like a Tully Blanchard, people like a Bret Hart. They love those guys and they want them part of their manager stuff. So yeah, to hear about Tully just being the one that kind of they're trying to do the reunion for the Four Horsemen and Tully's the one that failed it, and you kind of look at it, people kind of looked at him side-eyed and like, dude, we could have had something, and it's very disappointing. Connor, what do you think of Tully's career since the whole falling apart and coming back as a manager?
So I haven't followed Tully Blanchard's career much, but the stuff I do remember is his stuff with Arn Anderson, the Brain Busters. They were the Brain Busters, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember watching a lot of old matches with them. I like VHSs with old matches with them too. They were one of my like when I watch something, I like to watch it all in order. So seeing all their matches, like they were a really good tag team, and then the Four Horsemen stuff was good with Ric Flair and all that. I liked when he come to AEW. He kind of, I feel like he has a better send off now than back then. Which don't know a whole lot about Tully Blanchard, but he actually wrestled in AEW once.
That one match he did.
Yeah,
if you want to watch the good stuff of Tully, in my opinion, watch before they left and became the Brain Busters. In any stuff of the Horsemen, but the combination of Arn, Tully, Rick, and Barry Windham was the best group, in my opinion. And the feud that slightly happened that we could have had 6 to 8 months worth of great matches was the Horsemen versus the Midnight Express.
Oof.
Before Tully and Arn got pissed off and went and became the Brain Busters. They dropped the titles to Bobby and Stan after about 3 matches at a house show because they were headed north.
Wow. Yeah, Siren, I know I can see you're kind of doing some research on
I
that.
am.
What's your take on Tully?
I forgot how he disappeared from AEW and ROH, and I'm like, what happened there? I forgot. And yeah, it was the whole Nana buying the embassy from him, which is neat. But yeah, no, I mean, I mostly remember him obviously from ROH and AEW, and I really enjoyed him. I did go back and watch, obviously, some of his older stuff when I was just getting back into wrestling, but I don't have much of an opinion on his career aside from the fact that I totally forgot what happened and where he went until just now. Yeah.
And
In my opinion, if you go back and watch it, he's not one of the huge names over history, but one of the best heels you will ever watch.
I love heels. I love a good heel.
Right, and I really hope that he is doing good right now. And that he's happy with what he's doing. So with me, I guess I'll round it out with my wrestler, and the person that I thought could have done something had it not been for a freak accident is a man named Terry Wayne Allen, also known as Magnum TA. This guy was on top of the world in the NWA, picked to be the next heavyweight champion, and he ended up in a car accident. It is featured on one of the episodes of Dark Side of the Ring and everything like that, but this guy was huge. If you were thinking of the next Hulk Hogan in a different promotion, this guy was it. He had the build, he had the personality.
He's got the look.
He had the look, and unfortunately, because of the accident of going high speeds and bad weather, he crashed. And it took him a while to recover. And
an hour away from here.
Yeah, and it was very sad, but he goes around, he still does appearances all over the place, and and honestly, he's still living a good life right now. He's not letting the whole being in a wheelchair, being almost paralyzed, being paralyzed from the waist down, pretty much ruining his life. He's still living it, but man, that career would have been great. Jason, I'll ask you first because this is someone that honestly, I'm not trying to put you out there, but someone when you grew up watching, So what would be your take on Magnum TA's career and what it could have been?
You never know what could have been. I mean, the sky was the limit. The guy was on fire. The 7-match series between him and Nikolov was amazing. He was good on the mic. He knew how to draw the fans in, and everybody loved him. As a Horseman fan, I hated Dusty, but I liked Magnum. And it's a sad state. But again, like Lex Luger now, he's such a positive guy. I mean, he just talks about what he went through, and how grateful he is and how blessed he is with everything and in the family he's got in his life. And what else can you ask for? I mean, he doesn't feel sorry for himself, and he doesn't expect anybody else to either.
And which is crazy. You mentioned the Four Horsemen. Your guy Tully Blanchard, him and Tully actually had a feud going on earlier in his
that
career.
I Quit match from Starrcade '86.
Yep.
And Magnum's accident was the reason Ron Garvin got his little run with the NWA title.
Yep. Connor. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jason. I didn't know you were done.
I just said they had to find somebody to transition for Rick to go back and get the belt back from. So Ron Garvin got that 2-3 month run with the title.
Now, Connor, obviously you watched Dark Side of the Ring. Are you familiar with Magnum TA's career and what your thought on it was?
Yeah, I actually met Magnum TA WrestleCade 2020 December, November. Somewhere around there. I met Magnum TA. Very positive person, just like Lex Luger. I actually kind of signed my WCW flag, which was really cool. I remember watching that Magnum TA. I watched a lot of his matches. I go under this like on Peacock or used to be WWE Network. Like they would have these compilations of matches, and a lot of these old matches have Magnum TA in it. He was really, really good in the ring. He was good on the mic. But I also watched. I believe did he have a Dark Side of the Ring?
Magnum, yes, he did have an episode on Dark Side of the Ring. Yes,
I'm gonna have to watch that.
because I remember one. I watched a documentary and it explained, you know, like why his career ended, and like Russ was talking about, like he was probably going to be like a really huge name in wrestling. Uh, if that wasn't, well, to me, he's still a huge name, but he probably would have been a world champion or made it to bigger heights in his career if that wouldn't have happened. But yeah, Magnum TA. I don't look like this is a dream match for me. Like taking two wrestlers from different eras, Hangman Page and Magnum TA. That would or Magnum TA and JBL would be a really interesting matchup. But yeah, I'm glad that Magnum TA is doing really good right now. It seems that he's really enjoying his life and not letting what happened define him. So that's really good.
Speaking of Tully, he married Tully's ex-wife and became the stepfather to Tessa.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. The stepfather to Tessa Blanchard. There's
Who
another
then lived
one
with him for a bit.
we could have brought up too as someone whose career is kind of trying to refix itself. Siren, my last question to you right now for that then, if you know, with all these wrestlers we're bringing up, do you see someone now, whether it's AEW or another promotion, that you hope has a good ending to their career?
There's so many really cool people that I really want to see become so much more than what they're given right now. All ego Ethan Page. I want to see where all ego Ethan Page goes, because that man is putting in work, and he's always put in work, but now he's putting in work on a personal level, on himself. He's always been great in ring, in my opinion. He's always been great on the mic. He's getting better. But like, he's actually putting in work for his actual physical appearance. Because he's always been strong. He's been strong enough and has the endurance enough to do the job, but to have that, like, that championship look, he's really going above and beyond, and I feel like that man has a bright future, and I hope so. Anyway, it can go one way or the other. Either he's going to fizzle into non-existence like a lot of my other favorites, Fuego del Sol, or like he's going to become something, and I really do think that ego has something.
Connor, same question. What's one wrestler you hope that actually does have a good career ahead of them and doesn't end disappointingly?
I'm gonna go Malachi Black. I think that he could be a really huge single star. Like a guy like that, you don't come across too often. You know, a guy with that type of character, and you know, I seen a podcast one time where he said that he has a whole book full of stories that he's had planned it out for the House of Black. And even someone mentioned it on here too, was a while back. But Malachi Black, for me, I think he could be a world champion. Hopefully AEW books him good throughout his contract. It expires in 2027, so I really hope that they you know, I like the House of Black as a trio, but I also want to see Malachi Black, the singles wrestler. So Malachi Black for me.
And
Agreed.
Jason, you have the final say. Who's one wrestler you'd love to see have a good full career without a disappointing ending?
Well, mine's short, so I'm going to piggyback off what she said for a second. To get Ethan Page back over, I would love to see a North reunion with some FDR matches, and then get him back up, and then you can break them up, have them feud, and send him on his way to bigger pastures.
I love that, Jason.
But as far as I don't want to be a downer, but with Edge's neck problems, Adam Copeland, however you want to go with it, and AEW being more and kind of, you know, a little freer with the things they do, I don't want to see him go out of the ring and not come back on a stretcher. I don't want to see him mess his neck up again and not be able to walk away the way he wants to. So I keep a close eye on some of the matches he's been doing.
Right. And that's a perfect call. Someone who's been in the industry for so long as he has, honestly, you do want to see him go out healthy and happy of what he was doing. So as we're winding it down here, I do appreciate you guys coming on, talking to us about everything and discussing this topic. This was basically out of the blue because of what happened at World's End. So it's definitely a good topic, though, too, because it is part of the lore and history of pro wrestling, where as fans, we have this hype about an event, about a wrestler, about a match, and because of the booking decisions or because of the wrestlers themselves, it's just very disappointing in the end as fans. But we stick by the pro wrestling because we want to see what happens. We're going to be disappointed, but we want to see what happens next. If it was part of a storyline or if it's something bigger. So again, I want to thank you guys for joining tonight on Talking Elite. Before I go, I always like to have people plug their social media if they want to plug it on the show. So Jason, do you have any social media that people can follow you on?
It's all J. Brandon Ingram. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. See a lot of TikToks of my animals. So
Heck yes.
Perfect. And Siren, where can people find you?
So it says there under my name, that way, Psy_game.on. That is my Instagram and TikTok. But then you can just find me on Twitch. I always go live after our shows here. So in about a half an hour, I'll be there. It's Siren13. So my name on Twitch. Although you type in Siren, I'm right there. You'll find me.
And Connor, since you're our producer, is there any special announcements that you'd like to share with everybody?
Yeah, coming up tomorrow after Rampage, it is our first of many AEZ Gaming contents, AEW Fight Forever. We had our first matches last night, and there's a lot of good matches. Things did get heated like I expected it to be. Some audio will be shared, some won't. Some people don't want their audio shared, some people do, which I respect that because everyone has a right to not want to be heard or anything like that. But Friday, our first episode does drop immediately after Rampage, so that should be really good. And then January 9th, well, actually, January 20th. Or the January?
I thought you said January 19th.
I get this.
No, you're right. It was a Saturday, right?
I get this date wrong every week.
Or no, you're right. You said it was the Friday before Rampage, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's now the 20th.
So it's the 19th, yes.
So we had I talked with Blue Meanie. Yeah, Blue Meanie is coming on here January 20th. It was supposed to be the 19th, but it's going to be the 20th now. There's some stuff that happened.
Quick funny story about him. When he was dating Jasmine St. Clair, she was, an adult star. And I have DJ'd at the mammary and buttocks establishments for a long time. And I got to hang out with Brian for about 3 days. Crazy dude. Probably doesn't remember me because it's been a long time ago, but crazy nonetheless.
That's wonderful.
Perfect.
Yeah, he'll be on here. Now it's going to be Saturday afternoon, kind of like what we did with Brandon Cutler. It was supposed to be that Friday, but some stuff happened, which is okay. We had this before, but he will be coming on here. We'll be posting that pretty soon on our socials.
Perfect. Yes. And I obviously, everybody here can find us on our socials here. We're All Elite Podcast on YouTube, on Twitch, on Spotify, on TikTok now too as well. So you guys can find us all on our socials here. Again, I thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. This was a very fun topic. I thank you, Jason, for joining us the first time. Siren, always fun returning. And Connor, always being the awesome producer that you are. If there's nothing else, we will say thank you. And as always, good night, everybody.